Great. So we are live for our Friday stand-up call, and just do the usual thing and go around the room and see if anyone has any updates that they want to share. Caroline.
So just Chris and Michelle and I are still working on the Vermont financial statement. I'm a little antsy in terms of that generic object. If we want to do two parent incomes, is there an easy way to just, because I was reading about the objects and the attributes and how an attribute can be an object itself, it can be an object itself and then it has an attribute. Can I just put in something else in front of that S and have one for one parent and the other for the other parent? That's one question. I think, and then the other thing was just, you were saying, if I wanted the debugging pink text in an interview, I can use the assembly line AL visual YAML, include that, and then that'll bring it up. Okay.
It will bring other things that you may not want, but if that works for you and you're okay with how it looks, then that's where it starts. It'll be the easiest way.
Otherwise, I can go look at the file and see where it is, right? And just put that in.
Yeah, and it's defining the default screen parts free area. That's actually where that code's coming in.
Right. So I have
other logic there that like looks up the package number and the ID, and if you need all those other things, like you need some of the other code from that file too.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so I think that's me for this week.
Okay, I think that the income package is really flexible. Like I think there's some default objects that we made.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to use any of them. So pretty much if there's a person's income, you should be able to record it. But you're just saying like you want to have it to be two separate parents rather than.
Yeah, so basically we want to do essentially a financial statement for one parent, financial statement for the other parent.
Okay.
In Alaska. So I'm not clear because
they could have different households.
Do the one financial statement before we start two parents, but I would like to do two parents parallel because also I need to sort of show Jeannie that I'm doing this.
Okay.
But if it's easy, that's great. Otherwise, I can wait till we're at that point with Michelle.
Okay. I think it's easy because it's just really defining another object that you would store that value in. Right. And you use the same layout. The only thing is you'll have to like in the income, in that include YAML file, like you'll basically be duplicating it and using different variable names. But I don't know how much it uses generic objects and patterns like that to make it.
It does it a lot. That was what I had done my best at trying to change. So
okay.
There should be a whole lot of generic stuff, and if there's not,
so can you show me? And also, do you want Bryson? Do you guys want us to say something first before we look at that? About what you've been doing this week?
If anything, when you could say something first while I try and pull it up and figure out how to show you.
Sure. So yeah, I've just been working on getting ready for the conference next week. So we're doing 3 sessions, but kind of 3 sessions.
And by we, you mean you?
Me. By we, I mean me sharing our work, though, our joint work.
Sure.
So that we're doing a demo of the Weaver. I'm working on some slides for that now. That's why that slide I was just pulling up. Just a little background, and we have like 20 minutes. I have 20 minutes for that, so I'm gonna, I think, do a live demo.
20 minutes to talk about the Weaver.
And that's at the Access to Justice AI and A to J workshop on Monday, which should be interesting. A lot of the talks there are pretty technical still too, but it's going to be a more self-selected crowd. And then a demo of Rate My PDF, like they have a day after lunch, people can just wander around and see demos.
Oh yeah.
So I'll demo Rate My PDF, and then that same day, I'm doing a presentation of our paper. So
Right.
I don't know if that's redundant or not, but we'll see what it's like.
Yeah.
So I've just been working on the slides for that. And then I did a little bit of work on some features that I thought needed to be in there, although not too much, because I don't want to like change stuff right before I present it.
You put a lot of stuff in there recently too, right?
Yes. Last week I did a bit more like real changes to things than this week, not much.
I
And
haven't
then the
tried
pronoun stuff.
the feeling lucky with the API. I think I put the API in as you suggested that I got from David, but then I think I haven't had a chance to run it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. It's still like, I mean, the thing that would make it really useful is if you could take the output of I'm feeling lucky and change it. And there's some significant things you can't change yet, which you can't, once it puts it on a field on a particular screen, you can't move it in the Weaver.
Right. Yeah, you said, but you can go into DocAssemble and move it.
You can go into DocAssemble and do it. Yeah. So I still feel like that's kind of the missing feature. It needs to not be.
Yeah.
But maybe I'll work on that. Who knows? I'll have some time traveling before the conference. And I'll just make sure I don't do it on main, merge it into a branch or something. Although that's silly for a 20-minute demo to try to change that feature.
Well,
maybe at least during the conference talks.
You're not a perfectionist, are you?
No, I'm really not, actually. I'm very comfortable with releasing things as they are, but it's when it's sharing, it's like, oh, this is my incentive to get the new things done. That's really all.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much it. I did say I was going to get more of the pronoun features live for Score. I did not do that this week, but I may try.
So did we decide?
I can always try and wrap up some of that for you next week while you're out.
Okay. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. So
it's just like actually
just
releasing it. I think you would. Oh, it's copying it to all of the other appeal stuff. Okay.
Are any of the live ones on assembly line? I think all of them are on AVC.
I don't think they are.
Yeah. So that's why it's copied.
Because we're all straight using the emailing stuff, and we never really iterated on that too much on current assembly line. So
yeah, I could pull it out into its own file that's shared across those packages. That's another option. But it's still duplicating it. So
it's still it's like you'd have to duplicate it, and then you'd also have to change some stuff in the file itself to reference that external file. So it's probably just easiest to copy paste a bunch at the end.
That's what I was thinking. It's only like 6 interviews or something. So
okay. Yeah.
I did one. I did the motion to stay, which I think is the most popular form.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll let you work on it next week, Bryce. It is pretty straightforward, but if you're busy, I know you're busy with a lot of other things. So I also
that is a thing that I agree that we should do, and it actually has a timeline on it. So
yeah.
So you're going to have it be not random, and then you're going to take out one of the Z's or Z, whatever, Z's or Zir.
I did. Yes, I made those 2 changes. So that's what's live in the appeal score one now. So
right. And so that's the way it's going to be, right? You just have to put them in the other.
Just have to copy it. It's literally just copying it and then testing it to make sure I didn't break anything and that it works in the template.
Do you guys think it's gone. Not the listen button. There's something. All right, well, maybe I'll think of it before we finish. I don't know. I was something I wanted to ask you about that was. I don't know. It's gone.
It might pop up.
Maybe it'll come back. Yeah.
Oh, and just I have to sign off at 1. But I can turn over control to.
You're going now?
At 1 o'clock, I have a meeting.
Oh, I'm supposed to meet with Jeannie as soon as we finish, so that's okay. I'm not gonna.
Okay. Here, while we were doing all this discussion, I pulled up the changes that I've done for the affidavit of indigency, which is I think the closest. It's the closest thing to what I think you want.
Right.
And so, yeah, so like the rough notes of like, here's how I used AL2 AL income is that I did check, and like everything in AL income itself is generic. So it's like, as long as you're using the right objects, you don't have to worry about like names or anything like that, specific attributes. But what I did, I don't know what GitHub's doing. There's still only one like user for this form. So I still only have like users. Essentially, this is all just like users 0. So like the first person, and I think that's probably what you want, but like the other part is probably closer to households, where you have household, which is just like the list of people in your household, and it makes you list all of their jobs. And so we have household with like your list of people of just like who's in your household. And then and then you have household I.jobs. So every time like you refer to every time you refer to or like households 1.jobs or something, that will get all of the jobs for that one person. And that's just using AL job list, which is like an income thing.
But you could, for your objects, users I.
Yes,
exactly. Have users 1 for one parent, users 0 for one parent.
And yes.
Users, 0 and 1. And then can you, and then you use this itemized job list. And then when you do the X, how do you, so if you went into a question where the X, you put, so at the top of the question, you put generic object. Right now we do AL itemized job list. Would you put AL itemized job list, or would you put users I.jobs?
If it's like a specific interview, I usually end up doing like users 0.jobs, because if it's user 0, you always have to say like, oh, what are your jobs and stuff like that, and like what are you like, oh, like you pronouns and referencing them directly. Whereas if it's someone else, you just have to say like, oh, what is other person's name here, job, or like jobs, what are their jobs? And so I think a lot of, which I guess actually I can go, this is just the same file, just different parts of it, so I can jump around quick. But let me, if I can scroll through, I think most of the time I had a lot of, most of the time I end up just using like household specifically. Like this one, like I changed the wording on like how many jobs does this person in your household have, and I like used it specifically for household, and I didn't really bother with the generic questions too much.
Right.
Just because it makes more sense. And if it turns out like, oh, I really like the way I want to word this and I want to reuse it in a completely different interview with different names, you could always go back and just change. You could always go back and change it. And I think for that, you'd have to look through this. You'd have to look through AL income.yaml itself.
Yeah. So these questions. So whoops.
Sorry. Yeah. Like example for this one, like the vehicle list.
Right. So if you were going to say, tell us about, what I'm trying to do is figure out how would these, so they're going to be completely separate. So would you have separate questions, or would you have, like one identical questions, but different, one for one parent, the other for the other parent? Or where the X is, would you put, well, you're doing household, but would you do user 0 and 1? Or users I don't know how I don't quite understand how you'd separate the two.
Yeah, it's weird. And this is one of the things I run into with DocSimple a lot, is that you can, like, you could, if it wasn't for just trying to figure out like who you are talking about, I would just use the generic one a lot, because and so it's like, if you ignore the fact that this says like your vehicle specifically, which is actually not the best option. we can do in this point. But it's like, it's hard because you don't know who's actually owning this vehicle. Because we're just looking at vehicles. But if you ignore that part, like everything else is exactly what you want for both questions. Or like anytime you're asking, you always want to have like the same fields and the same make and like make model and stuff like that. You just want to subtly change this.
Because in the result at the end, you want to have two distinct lists of vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
The other thing occurs to me, possibly, I don't know if this would work, whether you had one YAML for one parent and the other YAML for the other parent, they'd be identical. But that you'd still have the same, you'd still come up with the same variable at the end that would have the same, you'd have one list, not two lists.
Yeah, that's not as ideal, I think. And so I would lean towards maybe, and maybe I guess if you want everything to be identical, I would lean towards starting. You don't need like the generic object stuff if you're only using I. What is GitHub doing? I don't like it. If you're only using I, you don't need all of the generic object stuff. You just need the you just need I. So if you write all of your questions as just like users I first, then that will like out of the box work with both parents. It won't say you and stuff for user 0 yet, but I think that's like for just like working on a prototype, that's fine. It will just say like, what is Bryce's like, etc. And
but where would you put the users in this, where would you put users?
This one doesn't work as well because it's just looking at the vehicle.
AL itemized job list, for example, because that's the thing where it gets so complicated because you've got so many layers.
Yeah. So you sort of, I think this one's probably good. Like this is like a good example of like, tell us about your blank or your fifth income or whatever. Right. And it has all of these different things.
Okay. Oh, source of income, user 0.
So yeah, so user 0 would just become users I. And then I think non-employment I, which is just like that particular, if there's another nested thing in there, that one just becomes J, and it's sort of just a weird standard that it's just all of the iterated variables. It's I, J, and I think DocuSimple supports K as well too. If you have like a third thing that also could be any random number in a list.
And it goes all the way to N for what it's
worth. It does. Yeah. Oh, nuts. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So you just keep going to the next letter past like I or J or whatever.
As long as they're not the same, because you want them to be different. Yeah, I get that.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you can avoid that deep nesting, it's probably better. But
yeah. Well,
object-oriented pattern and generic object let you do that most of the time, but sometimes it's easier just to make it really nested.
Okay, so all right, have you got? This is what question? Tell us about your income.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What times per year times plus? Can you scroll down? Can we see another question? Because you're not using X for itemized job list here, are you? Or are you?
No, I'm not. And specifically, and this is non-employment. Let me see if I can find an employment one, which is like the exact itemized job list.
Oh, here, X is part-time, right? So, does your job, okay, so there.
Okay, so I am using
users 0 and users 1 there. Have x.source.
I didn't do this because I think I wasn't sure if jobs are in if I was keeping track of jobs in multiple places. So I think like that, for example, like that doesn't work for this one because we have to keep track of the users' jobs. So it's like users.jobs or whatever. But then it's also, we're keeping track of household members' jobs as well. So there's household.jobs. And so there's no easy way to do both of those in the same question unless you're using an itemized, or unless you're using like the generic object stuff.
Right.
And what level to do it at is also, like I was going to say, it's also kind of unclear, and you just generally need to go up until you have enough info. Because if it's one of those, you can sometimes write stuff if you have like, this is just about this specific job. And then but then sometimes you might find you need to list the other jobs that someone's already written about, so they don't re-enter the same one. And so you have to you'd have to have generic object AL job list. But then you also might need to go up one more and be like, oh, you noted, like if it just, and it's mostly only if for like information that you're showing back to the user when they're entering it. And so if you need to also show jobs that they gave the other parent on the form, then you would need to use users I, or you would need to use users I, so you can then iterate through all of the previous users or whatever.
So if you
I'm gonna sign off just so you know, but I'm gonna try assigning you as the host, Bryce. I think you should keep the stream.
It keeps going if there's a host. So
all right, good to see everybody. I will.
See you, Quentin. Have a wonderful week.
Sounds good. See you.
Bye.
Okay, so I guess the thing is, I mean, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to jump into this, but at least having talked to you about it, when we get to it, then my, at some level back here, my brain can be percolating on it. So for example, if you were going to say, forget about the does your job, but could you say $, so on line 507, could you say $ curly bracket, users I, would it be .x .source?
Or
it'd have
for
to be
stuff like that, no.
No, you can't do that. Okay.
Yeah, so you can't have, if you have a generic object, it's got to be like the first thing. So if you have X, it has to be the very first part of it. So you can't have, I see what you're saying of like, if you had a generic attribute of some other thing, I don't think that would work.
I see.
And so if you end up needing stuff like that, then you do just have to jump straight to like using that object specifically, which is generally is good, because it will then get you all the other stuff you need as well.
So you mean instead of making it generic, you'd make it specific? Is that what you're saying? Instead of using the X, or you wouldn't use the X anymore. You do it like you did before with the household.
I probably would use the X. I guess I'm not sure if it's one person's jobs, if they're different, like, I guess the thing I wouldn't be clear about without having like an example of what you're trying to think of is, so like in this one I have, if I am able to find it, I might not actually be able to find it quickly. This one worked. So it's like the jobs, or like a specific job that someone else in your household has.
Right. I see what you're saying. Right.
And so I guess if you are keeping, most of the times if it's the same, and this is essentially still like an AL itemized job or whatever. And I try to keep all of those in the same place. So they're all going to be under .jobs for like each member of the household. And if you're keeping them on separate attributes, if you're keeping them on separate attributes, I would stay towards specializing each of those attributes, because if you're keeping them separately, like, you're probably going to need to be asking for them slightly differently. Otherwise, why are you separating them? And they could just be a part of the same list. Like if you're asking for them in the exact same way, then I'd keep them in the same list. And if sometimes later you need to like look at only jobs that were tip-based or something, we have all of the like extra filters and stuff that you can just look at those types of jobs and stuff. I think that should be all the documentation, and that's a bit more complicated, but that's sort of what I think what you would want to do.
Yeah.
And if there is like some reason of like, oh, hard stop, there needs to be a strong difference, and we need to ask about these questions for like jobs that you worked in more than a year ago versus jobs you worked in less than a year ago, and those are separate attributes, then you should keep them separate attributes, but don't bother using the X generic stuff for that. So
Okay, I think this is your supplement, right? So this would be.
yeah.
Okay, so I think that'll get me started thinking about this. And these jobs, are these the jobs here? Are they itemized or they're itemized because you're getting these details about them, right? The job, right?
I think these are all itemized. Yeah. There were some that weren't well, no, actually, this one's not itemized. This one I think is just a regular job.
Oh, I see.
Because itemized jobs, I think, because the form itself doesn't actually end up asking for like, oh, what are like the tips for your household members? They just care about their total income. And so
if you wanted to do itemized jobs, would you put instead of job, you put itemized job or job itemized or whatever? Is there a different?
Yeah, I think you would just end up jumping around a bit more. I think like we would just end up, and so whenever you like right here, we're declaring this as like an AL job list.
Right.
I think if you wanted that to be an itemized job list, you could just change it to AL itemized job list.
Perfect.
And you'll get all of the like default questions out of the box from that, and you can still like do the extra customization on top of it as you want. So.
Okay. Oh, that would make sense. So we could, in other words, we could, instead of users I, we could have parent 1, and then object 2 could be parent 2.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Because we don't have multiple, we have 2 parents.
I guess that's the thing you would need to know about. Is it always going to be 2 parents? Is there ever going to be just a 1 parent case? Or I guess that doesn't make sense. But yeah. And is there ever going to be a chance that it's like multiple guardians? And if there's not, then like you're right. If there's always going to be 2 parents, then
in this use, there's only 2 parents.
Perfect. Yeah. Then in that case, you don't really need parents I. Yeah, you wouldn't need too many of IJ and stuff.
So basically, could I have 2 objects blocks? One would be parent. Well, it would just, instead of users bracket I, it would be parent 1 with all. I'd replace users I with parent 1, and then I'd have another objects block. It would be parent 2, identical to parent 1, except it would say parent 2 instead of parent 1.
Yes. Yeah. And that's right. And that makes sense for how you would do that. And I guess there's no place where you would be asking for the same thing between the 2 different parents, like in the exact same way.
It'd be slightly different. And that way you could say and then the other question would be parent 2's, whatever you call it.
Yes. Yeah. And if for some reason you do need to ask in the same way, or like if it doesn't matter, you don't have to use your in that specific case, like the out of the box defaults that we already have for the AL income stuff should be good, I would say. But yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. I'm gonna percolate and then come back to it probably in a couple of weeks.
Please percolate. I sent the link to just that file, which I think would be useful if you're like trying to get a guess of like how it looks, and feel free to like just shoot me any quick questions on like, you did this in that file, why are you doing that? And I can explain. So
that'll be great. I mean, I'm sort of, in the free time I don't have, I'm also still, nobody's done the financial statement, and you've pretty much done the financial statement with your affidavit of indigency supplement.
Yeah, it's close. I don't think it's a full one. I remember the one.
It's pretty close. I mean, you're asking for expenses, income. I mean, the only thing that's different is there's slightly different category. You're asking for slightly different things, but it's pretty much the same thing. And so you've done all the work for it. So I would love to get that sorted. And in a way, I'm sort of using that because I need to do 1 parent before I do 2 parents. And so I'm thinking, well, why don't I do the Massachusetts financial statement while I'm working on the 1 parent, while I'm also editing Quentin's up to code. Working on it, but not getting
there. So much.
Okay. All right. So here's another question, totally unrelated to DocAssemble, but I know you know the answer to it. Is there any reason that you would have to type https : / into a browser these days, I thought all browsers default to HTTP. I know you have to type HTTP if there is no HTTPS on the site. But is there, can you think of any reason you would have to physically type out HTTPS?
It depends on the website you're going to.
Yeah. What? How?
I like, for example, because I think so. I don't actually know what the browser default is nowadays. I know a while back, like circa 2017 or 2018, like you still had to install a browser extension called like HTTPS everywhere to do that by default.
Right.
And it would essentially like, yeah, every time you type in the URL, it would try HTTPS first. And if that doesn't work, then it would do HTTP. But I don't know if browsers have ever changed the default to try an HTTPS first. But like, for example, like the like proxy server stuff, like the e-filing server stuff that I work on, which is not a website that people are intended to type into their browser, but I do all the time.
Yeah. I
have not set up properly to like always forward to HTTPS. So if I just enter the URL without HTTPS at the front, I think it tries HTTP. It then immediately breaks because my browser or like the server doesn't actually, it only does HTTPS and nothing else. And so it will immediately break if you try and do that. And then I have to go back and add the HTTPS at the front. So I think it's dependent on how you set up the server. But with that said, I think most websites are smart enough to forward you to the HTTPS stuff by default.
Yeah, but I'm a little confused because I thought by default, Chrome and Firefox, and I would assume Internet Explorer and Edge or whatever those are, the Safari ones. If they go to if you don't type in anything, you just type in the URL, it should go straight to the HTTPS page. And the only reason you'd want to, I mean, I read that somewhere that Chrome just does it. And then if the page is HTTP and not S, then you get this warning that it's not a secure website.
Yes.
So why would you have to type in the HTTP? You're saying you have to put a browser extension, but if browsers automatically go to HTTPS.
I'm wrong, apparently. As I'm looking it up, it's, yeah, like in 2021, Chrome changed. So it was like before that, like you did need the extension because it would not default to it, but apparently it does now.
Yeah.
And Chrome does, and I don't know if Chrome is pretty much everyone, like Safari probably also does it too. But
I mean, I think Firefox and Safari both do that. And that's the three biggies, right? So I really don't want to print. I don't want to tell people to go see this web page. They have to type in HTTPS://
I see. Okay. I was about to say, like, what specifically were you thinking of?
So all our printed materials, they're saying that they have to do that. And I'm saying that's ridiculous. They should just be able to type in, docassemble blah, 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 or courts.alaska.gov/ something or other. And I think it's ugly and it's not access to justice-y.
Yeah.
So I just want to be sure I'm right about this, because I'm not going to fight about it anymore. I'm just going to accept what they tell me, but I just want to make sure that I'm not really wrong about this.
No, yeah, you're not wrong. I know Chrome does it. There's like their post about starting it. It's version 90, and I don't know like user base. That's the only other thing, is that I don't know Chrome like versions. Like older Androids are probably not going to have Chrome 90. And so that's the only thing that I would.
Yeah,
I'm not sure about it.
If we looked at our analytics, we would know what our audience is using.
Yes, yeah, that is true. Like you could at least tell, like, oh, they're all on this version of Android, and like there's, for older ones, there will be a like latest version, or the like there will be a specific version of Chrome that they can use. I'm seeing if there's any like online data on any of this stuff. There usually isn't, but it was Chrome 90. So, okay, let me turn off everything but like the really lowest one of 102. Well, Chrome 102 had 0.06% market share the last month. So that's Chrome 102. So that's like 10 versions ahead of where they did this. They essentially started, I'm sharing the wrong screen. There we go. They added it in like 2021 essentially. So it's only if it was really old. But yeah, you would be, and this is just like worldwide stuff, and it's probably always going to be really shifted. But so I would check. Yeah, I would check your version or like your like analytics or stats for the sites.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm not sure otherwise though. I do understand the idea. It is nice, or it would be nice to just get rid of this extra stuff. And it's one of those things that it's like most people will not type that in, but that's also a pretty strong assumption based on like tech literacy and stuff like that. So,
well, I mean, there's plenty of people who don't know what you can't refer to a browser. Many people.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Right, and so. And the other thing is that HTTP, it's like the www, you know, if you don't have to type it in, it's just more work for people, right? And especially people read at a 4th grade level, you know?
Yeah, and they might only do 1 slash instead of 2 slashes and stuff like that, so.
Exactly right. So, right, okay. And then do we have any, is it gonna be, do you think it would be fairly easy? Would it be AL visual? For Michelle to help me. For some reason, Jeannie's decided she wants to move the listen button to the top right corner instead of the left corner.
That was the listening thing you were thinking of?
Yeah, even though she found evidence. I couldn't find it anywhere, but she said she found evidence that explains why the placement in the top left corner is the best, top right corner is second best. So she's decided she wants to go with top right corner. Is that something Michelle could probably help me with, or is that going to be a major thing?
I think that's something Michelle would be able to help you with.
It's not urgent, but you know.
So I think we could just move. I think if you could just shift the whole thing over to that side. I don't remember the CSS off the top of my head.
It's okay. It's all right. I just, if you think, I'm just asking because you're here and.
Yeah, she would definitely be able to help. And the thing I'm just not sure about is if it would work with like one line of if it would be a 1-line change or if it would be like, turns out it's a lot more complicated. I think it should be a 1-line change.
All that stuff in the banner, remember? That was not that straightforward.
Yeah, that's fair.
This isn't in the banner. And
I still have conflicted feelings on the listen thing. But
on the what thing?
On that listen button, I still have conflicted feelings about it.
So what are your concerns or thoughts about that?
Just that gets in the way accessibility wise for people who are for people not when you have to see it, but like for people like low side like screen reader users, it gets in their way. And it's because either
they already have a screen reader, you mean?
Because they already have a screen reader. And I don't remember if we I wanted to take it out. I don't remember if I actually have yet. But then it's like if you take it out, there are like low vision people who use screen readers who are going to be wondering why there's a thing that like they can't click on, interact with. And it's just like I can't find a good solution besides just taking it out. But that does defeat the purpose of like low literacy people trying to use it. And the thing is,
our listen doesn't highlight the words as it reads it, does it?
No.
Yeah. I mean, that would be a very good thing to have, is have the one that highlights the words, because that's really good for people who are low literate.
That would be pretty cool. I don't know how to do that. I think it's
Well,
very,
I
the thing
haven't
we have
tried
is
that.
very low tech and it just plays a file. So
Yeah.
like we would have to have embedded like,
Yeah.
oh, this
I
word
mean,
is
we
this part of the
paid
page or whatever.
Not,
So,
it wasn't cheap. It was $4,000 a year to have that
yeah.
mass legal help. But people used it. That was the thing. We had evidence that people used it. And
No, yeah, it is a pretty cool thing.
I really like that idea to help people read. Or so many. So,
No, yeah.
but since we don't have that, I'm not gonna. So I feel better about moving it to the right hand corner, given what you just said. That makes me feel better. So thank you.
Cool.
Okay,
Glad I
so
can help.
you around next week?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, I'm around next week.
Are we so David's gone. Quentin's gone.
He's back. He's back next week, I think.
Right.
David was like out for the latter half of this week. Quentin's gone. Yes, Monday's a holiday.
That's what I was checking to see.
So yeah,
holiday, right?
and I'm pretty sure I saw David change those the invites for next week just because it's a holiday.
I don't know, Michelle. I think if we're not part of Suffolk, we don't get those invitations and invites and everything.
Interesting. There's a bunch of. Let me check. If you don't, I'll add you. I know it. Like I feel like it emails everyone when you add people again. But I know. Well, I know because there's a lot. Like there is a invite, like a calendar invite that David sends to everyone who's in the group. At least I thought it was everyone. If you're not getting it, we can add you.
Yeah, I haven't been getting them, and I've heard him say it a few times, and I thought Michelle doesn't get them either. So
that would make more sense, I think, because Michelle sort of like this was like the partners meeting was supposed to be just the partners meeting.
Yeah. Okay, you're saying that's a partners meeting invite.
Yes, the partners meeting invite everyone has. You're probably right that not everyone actually has an invite to the like deep dives or the admin meetings. Yeah, you're right. I don't think there is a standing calendar event that I have, but you're right. I don't think it's a thing that like is, and it got emailed to everyone. So I'll figure out if that's a thing we can do.
But I didn't realize that Monday was a holiday until somebody said, I think Chris, I don't know, somebody said it this week, and I thought, oh, I didn't know it was a holiday. I mean, I wasn't thinking about the date, and the court doesn't have it, so it's not in the calendar.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
You're on the Monday management meeting, at least Caroline. Oh, so yeah, it's your old email. Well, we can add your new email on there, so you actually get these, and you can tell when. I don't think consistently like we delete all of them, but we'll at least delete one of the things saying, oh yeah, this is a holiday. So
yeah, that's good.
You'll get some notification.
I mean, Michelle was sending me all kinds of stuff 2 weeks ago, and I wasn't getting it. I couldn't understand. So apparently my old identity is still in Teams.
It's hanging around, yeah.
Okay. Because I don't think I can even get to it anymore. So I can't even look up anything that I was part of. Sure.
Yeah, no, that's weird.
Okay. All right.
And it looks like David. It looks like actually I can't. Doesn't look like I can actually change this, but David for sure can because he's like the meeting organizer. So I'll just ask him.
Okay. So I won't see you Monday, but have a good week.